Thank you for joining me today in my garden. I'm Liz Davey, and you're watching A Walk in the Garden with Liz Davey on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Television. And today I'm working on some outdoor Christmas decorations, and I'll be working on some indoor Christmas decorations and some Christmas trees. My gardens have already been put to bed, and there's not much to see out there right now except a little snow and a lot of mulch and a few baskets that are covering up some of my tender plants. Today I'm going to be working on a topiary tree as a Christmas decoration, and what I've done is created a cage out of chicken wire, and I've soaked in my bucket 2 pieces of oasis. And my plan is to put the 2 pieces of oasis in the chicken wire cage. Maybe need to adjust it a little. And then put it around this post. Now the post is in a flower pot, and what I've done is nailed a piece of wood to the bottom of the post, and then put a couple of heavy rocks on top of that. After I put it in the flower pot, and then I added some soil on top of that. Well, the next thing I need to do is use wire in order to tie this together at the bottom a bit so that it doesn't fall, the oasis doesn't fall out. I'm just going to kind of thread it through and pull it tight from side to side. And this achieves the form for the tree that I'm building. Pull it as tight as I can around here. And it doesn't really matter if it isn't all the way up to the top. The oasis is quite heavy when it's soaked. There will be some pieces that fall out as the wire holds it in place. And again, you push it underneath and then lace it around with some wire. This is probably the hardest part of the project. I'll finish around the base and tie it off. Now, with our form in place around the post, we can start adding boughs of evergreen, and I've trimmed evergreens, and I'm just going to add boughs, and we're going to fill up the form with various pieces. We'll get a rough shape at first, and then we can trim it and turn it as we go. And sticking the pieces right into the fork. I have some white pine and some arborvitae and some hemlock. And again, I'll be sticking most of it right straight in. It's a good way to use the trimmings off an evergreen to get some Christmas decorations. We can also add some pieces of holly as we go. It always adds a nice touch. Put the taller pieces up towards the top. You can kind of trim it as you go so that you keep your shape going. The idea is to cover the oasis so you can't see any part of it. And it does take a little while. Try to get one side done here, and then I'll turn it a bit so you can see a finished edge. Use whatever pines you find. You can use all one pine. Or, as I am, add a variety. Turn this a bit so that you can see somewhat how it's going to look. I'll finish a little more here. The arborvitae tends to fill in a little bit faster. There's a little more of that here and there. And again, trim off a few spots as we go. This will last pretty much all winter. Bottom. Get some holly. There, I think I've completed enough that you get the idea. I will continue finishing around towards the back and sides of this arrangement. And again, add a little more holly here and there because the berries look so pretty when there are berries. I have some that is buried right here. Cut some of the tops off so the berries show. And pop it in underneath. And keep adjusting. And adding pieces as we go until we achieve a nice shape. And then trimming it to get the proper shape that we want. It's a little too tall or a little too wide. Finish off the project, I'll tie a bow around the base. And this will sit near my garage for the rest of the winter. As not only a holiday decoration, but a winter decoration. So that would be how to make a topiary tree. And now we're going to go inside and work on some decorations inside to be hung either outside or inside. Today I'm working on some arrangements for Christmas decorations using a lot of greens from my own garden and some that I've purchased. I've purchased a wreath, but the purchased wreaths tend to be fairly flat. So I will need to embellish it a little with some bunches of greens from my own garden. And I'm using holly and cedar and white pine, and I also have to use, I've cut some hemlock. It's time you can prune your shrubs, and this is a good way to use some of those prunings to make some nice holiday decorations. The first thing I did with the wreath was to add a hanger, and I used a heavier wire, and I put it all the way around the wreath, and then fastened it together to make a good sturdy hanger for my finished wreath. Again, the purchased wreath, and I'm going to add these embellishments to the wreath. And I know I've got my top right up here, so I want to put a bow at the top, so I won't be putting anything there. But I'm going to take the bunches, and I've already added a few of them down into the wreath, and you want to get them down in so that the wire that you're using, I've used paddle wire, and I'll show you that in a minute. And I want to wire it to some of the lower bunches. Sometimes a little hard to get in here to do it, but you should be able to find a sturdy branch in there that you can work your bunches around. And you want to go with the flow of the wreath. That makes it look a little more natural. And the flow of this wreath is around in a circle, and so I'm putting my embellishments also around, and then we'll cover it back with the pine. So I have some other things to add too. And you can fasten these down in several places if they need it. This is the paddle wire. It comes on a plastic or cardboard piece, and it is a very fine, flexible wire. Cuts very easily, and you can use it to fasten things in. It comes in a green color, which makes it pretty unobtrusive when it is in the wreath. But again, you want to try to hide as much of the wiring and the mechanics as you possibly can. It just makes the wreath look a little nicer. Okay, we've wired on some bundles of holly and arborvitae and other greens, white pine. The white pine has the long needles which contrast with the short fir needles. And then I'll add some other embellishments to the wreath. And I've made a little snowman out of wood. You'll see that it goes with the theme of this wreath. And I'm going to add that right down in here. And I want to make sure it's securely added. So I'll see if I can get all the way under the wreath and around towards the back. I put the wire around the neck of the little snowman that I painted. It's so that I'd have something to fasten him on with. And there, we've got that down in that corner. And then we need to put a nice bow on the wreath. And this is a bow using a ribbon that I purchased, which has the snowman theme. And you can purchase either a ready-made bow, or you can learn to make your own. They're really not too difficult. Bow makers are available, but bows are also readily available. So. We need to find our second wire here. And again, you want the bow to be on tight. If you put the wreath outside, you don't want the bow to blow away. Arrange the tails a little bit. And you can add other things to the wreath as well. And I'm going to add a little spray of pine cones. Again, I've wired each of the pine cones. You just put the wire around the pine cones pieces, and then I will use the wire and wire it in here with the holly, kind of around this bundle. And then to finish off the wreath, I want to add a little red bird. Red birds are kind of my theme this year. I really love them at my feeder, and I love to see them in a Christmas wreath as well. So I'm going to add this red bird right up here by the holly. It has a little clip on it, and we can just clip it right on. And there is our wreath. Nice holiday wreath, not hard to embellish. There are other things that you can purchase. If you don't have holly berries to add, you can purchase artificial berries at the craft store, and many, many decorations like the little bird. I made the snowman, but you can also get other things like that you can add to your wreath. I'm not going out as much this year, so I didn't do as much shopping, but I did a little more homemade decorations. So use some of the clippings from your garden and create a beautiful wreath. I'm going to hang that right up here. And you can, once you hang it up to test it, you can rearrange a little, add anything that you need. The next thing I'm going to make is a table arrangement. And I'm starting off, get some of these pine needles out of here. Starting off with a wooden box, and I've used a cheese container inside because my box has holes in it. In the bottom you can see there's some holes, and I don't want it to leak on my table. So I've used a cheese container, and I cut the top down so that it would fit into this box. Whatever container you use, you probably can find a recyclable plastic container to use to hold the wet foam that I've put in the box. As I trimmed my red twig dogwood, did the pruning on that this year, I cut some of the larger stalks, and the smaller stalks I did use in the middle of my outdoor arrangements, and the large ones I cut at an angle, and I added 3 of them to the oasis in this arrangement. Now the next thing I need to do is cover that oasis and use some of my cuttings here of white pine and the others. And the plan here is to cover the oasis so that it is no longer visible. And we may need to cut a few more pieces. And I also have some arborvitae here that I can cut. This covers nicely. And again, I'm using small pieces. A variety of greens is nice to use, and that's usually what you get when you do some pruning too. This is the hemlock. And again, more arborvitae to cover. And some spruce. My blue spruce had no berries this year. I would like to have added those into the arrangement, but unfortunately, due to the drought probably, there were no berries on it this year. I'm going to keep adding white pine. If you take a piece out to reuse it, you want to make sure that you recut the end, because adding it into the foam will seal the end of the piece of pine, and it will become brown a lot faster. A little more of the cedar. And a little more of the white pine. I think we've got it about covered. Now it's time to embellish it a little bit. I'm going to add some holly. And my holly did have some berries this year, so it's been quite beautiful. And then some of the things that I dried. I have a whole box here of dried materials that I dried, and some of them I even spray painted. The sedum, it was not as vibrant a burgundy color, so I added a little spray paint to it. But these are fern fronds that I'm adding now, which I've sprayed gold, and they work really well in a little arrangement like this. And again, I'm working with, trying to work with groups of 3, or at least odd numbers. I'll put one over here, so that'll make a 1, and with that, I will put, this is a poppy stem. And we have also an iris pod. And again, these have all been sprayed with gold paint. And there's another poppy pod. I'll put it over this way. And these are our echinops, which is a globe thistle, and those have been left just the way they grew, and they add a little white fall, and they're starting to shatter a bit, but you have to treat them quite carefully because they do shatter. Next year, hopefully I will remember and pick them a little sooner when they might be a little more stable. They do add a pretty snowflake effect to the arrangement. And then one more thing to add, again with my red birds theme, I'm going to add a bird nest. And this one has a wire through it so that it will stay put. And then I'm just going to set a nice red bird in it, in the nest. And there's our floral arrangement for the dining room table. One more item that I'm going to make. I constructed a frame from branches I cut in my yard. Really taking recycling seriously here. And I screwed them together. I've tried using glue, hot glue, regular woodworker's glue, and also nails. And I found that they didn't work successfully. The wood tended to split. But I found that using wood screws and drilling pilot holes worked very well. So I've laid out my plan with my sticks and then screwed them together. And then I've added a piece of string at the top for hanging. Because I'm going to add other things at the bottom, a piece of string kind of works better than trying to put a hanger on it because it allows you to adjust to make the frame level. Now we'll add some embellishments to it. And I'm going to keep this one fairly simple and add a couple of pieces of pine cuttings from the garden. And I'll wire those on. Oh, that one's got a wire. Use it just to go around. Fasten it in place. I wrapped the wreath with some wild grapevine that I found edges of my yard. It adds a little rustic character to it. And now we will add a purchase decoration. This is a little, what they call a pick in the floral trade. And again, the red birds. And this has a little pick on it, which I'm going to move to the back. It will help hold it, but I'm also wiring it in place. It's a little hard to do from the top side. Okay, untwisted it. And I lost a piece of wire. Let's try this again. And there we have that. And then I want to add a little extra decoration at the top of the wreath. And for that, I'm going to use some of my dried items. A little dried yarrow. And a few pine cones. Again, I've wired a set of 3 together. I'll wire those to the top corner, and I can cut off the stems a little shorter. And then I want to add a bow to the base of the wreath. I want that to go right underneath this bird. And this is just a simple bow, kind of like you tie a hair ribbon. And this is the finished design, ready to hang in my front entry. Now it's time to put on my Christmas apron and head to the kitchen to cook a few special Christmas treats. This year it's going to be a little different in the cooking department because fewer people will be coming to the house and we won't be going much of any place either due to COVID. So I'm going to be baking a little less, but there are several things that just mean Christmas, and those are the things that I want to concentrate on this year. One of them is Christmas cookies, and I will be baking Christmas cookies, but a lot of times I'll be doing half batches instead of whole batches. Today I'm going to be making some cranberry, almond, refrigerator cookies, and I'm going to put the dough together over here and then shape it back over on the counter. And I'll give you the instructions for a whole recipe, but you can also cut them in half and make a half recipe. 1 cup of butter is already in the mixer and softened, And to that, I'm going to add a cup of confectioner's sugar and 3/4 of a teaspoon of almond extract. And I'll mix that well. And then I'll add a tablespoon of grated orange rind, two cups of flour, and a half teaspoon of salt. And I had that in with the flour. And I'm going to mix that into the butter and sugar mixture. Come over and get a spatula too. And scraping down the bowl in between helps get everything mixed together. Now that things are mixed, I'll be adding a 1/3 cup of chopped dried cranberries and 2/3 cup sliced almonds. And then I'll mix these. And this kind of cuts up the almonds a little bit, which is good. And that's all there is to the cookie batter. And I'll bring it over here and work on finishing it. Everything is mixed well. And I'm going to turn this out onto a piece of plastic wrap. I'll knead this a little bit to shape it and make sure everything is thoroughly mixed. All these nice little pieces of almonds and cranberries mixed in. And the next thing is to form it into a nice roll. These are refrigerator cookies, and we're going to be slicing them later. So if you've made refrigerator cookies before, and instead of ending up with round cookies, you've ended up with cookies that are flat on one side, this little trick will help you keep them together. And that is a paper towel tube used. Once the paper towels are gone, just cut it, slit it, and then put your refrigerator dough cookies into the tube And then we're going to put that in the refrigerator to get them well chilled. And once they're well chilled, we can bring them out. You'll see it's a nice round. And then we can slice these into 1/4-inch pieces and put them on the cookie sheet. And I'm using a parchment on the sheet. 1/4-inch slices. And we'll arrange those and give them a little space. They don't spread too much, but they'll spread a little. And we have a little chip and one almond came out. If they do break up, you can put them back together and they will bake up just fine. The thinner slices tend to break up a little more. But again, just and then we're going to put those in a 400 oven, or I'm sorry, 375 degree oven for about 9 minutes. And get ready to do my next item, which is an hors d'oeuvre. And this is something that I have made for years. It was found in a magazine long ago in an ad for Kraft. And it uses cream cheese. And I will add to the cream cheese. And again, I'm going to give you the recipe for the full amount. I'm doing half. And the full amount would be 1 large package of cream cheese and half cup of mayonnaise. Of course, they used products from the ad. I'm going to use my mixer to mix this together well. And then I'll mix in 5 crisply cooked and chopped pieces of bacon, a tablespoon of chopped green onion, half a teaspoon of dill wheat, and that came from the garden that we dried a little earlier, and a little bit of pepper. I'm going to mix this together. And we need to get as much off the leaders as we can. We're going to take them out of the mixer. Let's use the spatula. And this too will go into the refrigerator for about half an hour to an hour or longer. Until it firms up. We'll be taking it out. I've toasted some whole almonds, and the toasted almonds are done in the oven at about 300 degrees, and they take about 20-25 minutes. You do need to watch them carefully so that they don't burn. And I want to take this out of the pan that it was in, and I want to make it a pine cone decoration from this. And it's almost there now, and you can kind of shape it a little bit more if you wish. The full recipe will make 2 pine cones, and you can either put them side by side or you can serve them separately. They do freeze quite well, so if you want to make it. And then we're going to start studding it with almonds all the way around, and this will make it look more like a little pine cone. Keeping the points down, and of course the almonds are consumed along with the rest of the dip, which is what makes it so yummy. I like to start at the tip so that they overlap nicely, and it looks more like a pine cone. And the idea is just to cover the whole dip. There's our pine cone ready to be garnished. I have some crackers added, and then we can either put it on the table after we've garnished it and added the crackers, or you can, at this point, freeze this and serve it later, thaw it and serve it later, or it also makes a nice little gift along with a package of crackers. So that's our pine cone wreath, our pine cone. The next thing I'm going to make are some muffins. And I'm going to make cranberry muffins. I'm using cranberries a lot because it is cranberry season, and cranberry season in Massachusetts is special because a lot of the cranberries are grown here in Massachusetts. So I'm going to be making just my regular muffins, but I am making them as cranberries and making them a little special too. And I'm starting out with 2 cups of flour, and I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of sugar and a tablespoon of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And this will be my dry ingredients. Then I'll mix my wet ingredients. This is the muffin method. And for that I need 1 egg, 1 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and some vanilla. And I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon. And 1 tablespoon of the orange rind again. And to get the orange rind, I use a microplane with an orange. It makes a very nice, fine orange rind to put into things. You can see I've already used it on this one. But you just basically rub it across and rub your orange across, and you get lovely, fine orange rind without getting any of the white pith, which is the part that is bitter. And I'm going to mix these dry ingredients well with my whisk. And then mix it into the wet ingredients. And you just want to mix it until most of the dry ingredients are dampened. And then I'll add 1 cup of chopped fresh or frozen cranberries. Cranberries freeze extremely well, so if you want to stock up now, so you'll have them to use throughout the season, you can always freeze them, and they last very well into the summer. Now, to make them a little special, I'm going to use some molds that I have, which are Christmas trees. And I want to make sure that I spray them extremely well with cooking spray. Otherwise, I'm afraid they will stick. So I want to do that, and then I will carefully spoon my batter into them. And this makes a dozen muffins. And I happen to have 2 of the little pans, but I'll just be baking 1 right now. And I'll fill the other one a little later. And you want to fill them fairly full, but not over full. Remember, we've got that 3 tablespoons of baking powder, or I'm sorry, 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of baking powder, which will cause them to rise. And again, I want to make sure that I fill these over to the sides so that I'll get the tree shape when they're turned out of the little molds. These are going to bake in a 400-degree oven for about 20 minutes. Again, because of the size of the molds, you can also make them just in muffin pans or that have been greased, or use cupcake papers. Just a little more here. And get that away. Yeah, these are ready to go into the oven. And I may put them on a baking sheet. It will make it easier to take them out of the oven later. I set them on a baking sheet before I put them into the oven. And we'll set our timer for about 20 minutes to check them and see if they're done. Now I'll see you in the dining room when we're finished getting things out of the oven and getting them all arranged. Here we are. We have our snacks laid out, our Christmas treats, and I've embellished them a little bit. The muffins, the cranberry muffins, I put a little cream cheese frosting on and sprinkled them with some sparkling sugar and embellished the tray with a ribbon and a little holly and evergreen. All the cookies really need is just a light dusting of confectioner's sugar, and they will be delicious. And our pine cone wreath is ready to go, fluff of real pine, or you could use parsley if you don't happen to have any pine that you can pick. We're ready to go and enjoy perhaps a glass of wine or maybe a cup of coffee or tea along with a few snacks. We also have our centerpiece with the nice little red bird in it. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I will be seeing you again probably in February. I usually take January off. So Happy New Year as well as Happy Holidays from Buddy, Jim, and I to your house. This is Liz Davey, and you've been watching A Walk in the Garden on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Station.